I always knew my younger brother Logan had issues, but nothing prepared me for the night everything truly began to unravel. Until then, I had managed to keep my girlfriend, Kayla Monroe, safely outside the blast radius of my family's dysfunction. We'd been dating for 8 months, and our relationship felt stable, warm, and, most importantly, safe. Kayla worked as a pediatric nurse at St. Helens Medical Center in Brookridge, Minnesota, and her calm, kind personality balanced my own anxiety-ridden past. For months, I had avoided bringing Kayla anywhere near my parents or my brother. My childhood growing up with Logan had taught me to expect chaos anywhere he was involved. Our parents, Mark and Elaine Ward, doted on him relentlessly. Ever since we were kids, Logan could do no wrong. When he smashed my gaming console at age 6 because I wouldn't let him take it, they bought him a new one and lectured me about learning to share. When he killed my hamster by feeding it chocolate, they called it a tragic accident and scolded me for not watching my pet closely enough. By high school, he'd progressed to spreading rumors that destroyed relationships, but our parents insisted it was brotherly teasing. Now, as adults, Logan still lived with them, working comfortably in our father's real estate office, while I had built my own life working as a software developer. Despite that, the family dynamic remained unchanged. Logan was the golden boy, and I was the problem child. Kayla, being optimistic by nature, insisted we try introducing her to them. Maybe things are different now that you're all grown, she told me. I knew better, but I still agreed. Kayla looked beautiful that night, in a simple navy dress that made her even more elegant than usual. The moment we walked through the front door, Logan practically shoved our mother aside so he could reach Kayla first. He pulled her into a hug that lasted far too long, gripping her shoulders as though she were an old lover instead of a woman he'd just met. I stepped forward to intervene, but Kayla gently extracted herself before I had to. Throughout dinner, Logan found new excuses every few minutes to brush her arm, lean too close, or whisper quirky inside jokes that didn't exist. He shoved past me repeatedly to sit beside her, then made exaggerated comments about how boring older brothers couldn't keep up with fun guys his age. Kayla remained polite, offering tight smiles and shifting her chair away whenever she could. The moment that made her eyes widen in discomfort was when Logan scooped a forkful of food from his plate and held it toward her lips, smiling intensely. "You have to try this," he murmured. Kayla immediately shook her head and leaned back. "No, thank you." He lowered the fork slowly as if disappointed by her refusal. Meanwhile, my parents watched the whole spectacle with eerie passivity. Occasionally chiming in to confirm exaggerated childhood stories Logan told to embarrass me. He twisted minor events into grand fictions meant to make me look pathetic or unstable. Kayla glanced at me more than once, silently asking whether this was typical. Sadly, it was. After dinner, Kayla offered help clean up because that's who she is. I stepped into the garage with my father to move some boxes, but after a few minutes I realized Kayla had been gone too long. Something felt wrong. I found her in the kitchen, cornered between the counter and Logan's looming form. His arm was placed against the counter beside her hip, trapping her. "You deserve someone more exciting than Ethan, someone who actually knows how to treat a woman." Kayla's face was pale, her eyes darting around the room. She said, "Please move," keeping her voice low. The moment she saw me, her shoulders sagged with relief. She slipped their Logan and stood beside me, trembling just enough that I felt it through her hand. Logan chuckled like the whole situation was a sitcom gag. My parents didn't bat an eye when I told them what happened. My mother actually scolded me for misinterpreting playful behavior, while my father muttered about jealousy. Kayla and I left early, and the car ride home was quiet. She finally whispered, "I'm sorry, Ethan. I know you warned me, but I didn't expect that." Neither did I. But the worst was still ahead. For a few days after that disastrous dinner, things seemed quiet. Kayla worked her usual shifts at St. Helens Medical Center, and I returned to my programming projects. We tried to pretend nothing had happened, avoiding the topic of my family altogether, but the silence didn't last long. It started with the phone calls. Kayla mentioned that she'd been getting strange numbers calling her during and after her shifts. At first, it was nothing more than heavy breathing or someone hanging up immediately. I tried to reassure her, telling myself it might be a wrong number or a glitch. But by the 4th day, the calls had escalated into whispered insults, someone calling her cold, snobbish, or ungrateful. The messages always carried a disturbing edge, like the speaker knew more about her than they should. One voicemail hit me like a punch to the ribs. "She turned down the better brother. Her loss." The moment Kayla played it for me, my stomach dropped. I recognized the voice, one of Logan's old friends from high school, a guy named Chase Benton who still hovered around him like a parasite. It wasn't just Chase. I recognized 2 other voices in the later calls, guys who used to follow Logan around because he always had money from our parents to blow on drinks or parties. Kayla blocked each number, but new ones kept appearing.
Then came the texts. Messages such as, "You looked stressed today in that blue scrub top, long shift?" Or, "Pretty hair today. Bet Logan would appreciate it more." Those weren't random creeps. Someone was watching her. Kayla didn't connect it immediately, but I did. I had been dealing with Logan's obsessive behavior for decades. I knew how he operated. I knew how far he could push people to serve his agenda. Things took an even darker turn when Chase and two of Logan's friends started appearing at St. Helens. They pretended to be visitors, wandering the pediatric wing with no purpose, leaning against the walls as if they owned the place. Kayla told me they never spoke directly to her, but they stared, commenting just loud enough for her to hear snippets like, "She thinks she's too good for people," or "Bet she'd look different if she smiled." The third time they showed up, Kayla texted me while hiding in the supply room. "They're here again, 3 of them. Please don't get mad. I'm scared." I wasn't mad. I was terrified. She tried to downplay it, probably so I wouldn't worry. But that night after her shift, one of those guys followed her to her car. She locked the doors immediately, shaking so hard she could barely dial her phone. I drove straight to the hospital, and she cried into my shoulder as we switched cars. A friend followed me home to ensure no one tailed us. Kayla wasn't sleeping anymore. She woke up at 4 a.m. gasping for air, her chest tight with panic. She started dreading work, and her coworkers noticed how pale she looked every morning. Enough was enough. I had collected every voicemail, every text screenshot, and security footage from the hospital that her supervisor helped me obtain. The footage showed Logan's friends roaming the pediatric ward, lingering in hallways far from patient rooms, staring at Kayla as she worked. I drove to my parents' house with a folder full of evidence and a heart full of rage. Logan was sprawled across the living room sofa when I walked in, scrolling through his phone like nothing mattered. He looked up with a smirk. "Back already? Couldn't stay away from the golden child." I dropped the folder onto the coffee table, hard enough to make him flinch. "You and your friends need to stop harassing Kayla." I opened the binder and displayed each printed screenshot. "This is stalking. What the hell is wrong with you?" Logan simply leaned back, his expression dripping with smug satisfaction. "Maybe people just like Kayla better than you." I pointed to one of the texts. "This is Chase, and this references something you said at dinner. Stop pretending you don't know." For a moment, his smile disappeared. Then he leaned forward, staring straight into my eyes. "Maybe," he said softly, "Kayla wasn't such a stuck-up tease, then people wouldn't feel the need to knock her down a peg." My vision tunneled. The next thing I knew, my fist connected with his jaw. He stumbled backward, falling onto the sofa, wailing dramatically like I had broken his skull instead of delivering a single punch. My parents came running in as Logan clutched his face, and just like every moment of my childhood, their fury turned on me. My mother began screaming about how I needed therapy for anger issues, while my father accused me of being jealous of Logan's natural charm. "I have proof," I shouted, trying to shove the evidence folder at them. They didn't even look. My mother shook her head. "Kayla probably flirted with Logan and is embarrassed. Don't take her drama out on your brother." Hearing her defend Logan after everything pushed something inside me past its breaking point. "You never held him accountable for anything. He's out of control, and you're letting him terrorize my girlfriend." My father jabbed a finger toward the door. "Out. Don't come back until you apologize." I didn't apologize. Kayla's apartment became my refuge. She cried herself to sleep that night, feeling guilty for causing problems, even though she had done nothing wrong. She worried about losing her job. Her supervisor had been sympathetic, but with strangers lingering around the pediatric ward, the hospital administration was under pressure. The next day, we went to the police. We spent hours compiling evidence, screenshots, videos, recorded voicemails, witness statements from her coworkers. At first, the officer seemed to take it seriously, until we mentioned one name, Chase Benton. His father was a police sergeant. The officer's demeanor shifted instantly. He asked whether Kayla might be misinterpreting harmless behavior. He wondered if she had encouraged attention accidentally. When we asked to speak to a female officer, they claimed none were available. Eventually, they said the best they could do was issue casual warnings to the men identified in the footage. No charges, no restraining order. Kayla left the station with red, swollen eyes. I felt utterly powerless. The harassment didn't stop. If anything, Logan's friends became more bold. They started telling people at St. Helens that Kayla had a history of lying about men making advances. Rumors spread through the hospital like wildfire, so quickly that her supervisor eventually called her in to discuss workplace tensions. She left work early that day, shaking and speechless. When my mother called later, demanding an apology for lying about Logan again, I hung up on her for the first time in my life. I realized something painful but necessary. No one in my family was going to help us. The police wouldn't help. Logan certainly wouldn't stop. If I wanted Kayla safe, I needed a different plan. And that plan would change everything.
2 weeks passed, each one heavier than the last. Kayla and I had started documenting everything. Every text, every time we saw one of Logan's friends, every rumor that surfaced at her workplace. Our lawyer advised us to keep a meticulous record of the harassment, since the police had already shown whose side they were on. But the real explosion came when my parents asked us to come over for a family dinner. My mother called me 3 times in a single afternoon, insisting that Logan felt terrible about the misunderstandings and wanted to apologize. She said they had talked to him about boundaries, as if Logan's behavior was nothing more than an awkward flirtation instead of coordinated stalking. Kayla was hesitant, but she also believed in giving people one fair chance. She said softly, "Maybe your parents realize how serious this is. Maybe they want to fix things." I didn't believe that for a second, but I didn't want to crush her optimism. Against my better judgment, we agreed to go. The second we walked through the front door, I knew we'd made a mistake. The house was full. My parents, Logan, my aunt and uncle, the same ones who always insisted Logan was just misunderstood, and worst of all, Chase and 2 of the men who had been following Kayla at the hospital. My mother approached with a forced smile. "We thought it would be good to have everyone together so we can clear the air. A family intervention." My stomach dropped. "Intervention for what?" "For Kayla," my aunt said, sighing like she pitied us. "She clearly struggles with drama and insecurity. We want to help her." Before I could speak, Chase stepped forward, arms crossed, wearing that same smirk I knew too well. "We just want to make sure she's not being influenced by Ethan's paranoia." Kayla's lips parted slightly in disbelief. "Paranoia? You followed me at work." Chase shrugged casually. "We were visiting my grandmother. Happens that she moves around the hospital a lot. Strange coincidence, huh?" One of the other men snorted. "You nurses get so jumpy over nothing." Kayla's face paled. Then Logan cleared his throat dramatically, stepping into the center of the room like an actor preparing for his big monologue. "I just want to say," he began, eyes downcast in false humility, "that I'm worried about Kayla. I liked her the moment I met her. I thought she'd make a great addition to our family, but her accusations, they're hurtful, and they come out of nowhere." My mother patted his shoulder. "See, he's trying so hard to make things right." Then she turned on Kayla. "What exactly did you do to give Logan hope? You must have said something or looked at him in a certain way." Kayla stared at her like she'd been slapped. I would never. That's the problem, my father interrupted. You can't handle a little attention without assuming the worst. You've worked night shifts for years, haven't you? That affects judgment. Kayla's breath hitched, her chest rising in shallow pulses. I stepped between them. Stop talking to her like she's delusional. We showed you proof, you just refused to see it. My aunt lifted her chin. Evidence can be manipulated. Words can be misread. But a woman's behavior, that's harder to fake. Chase chimed in. She always looked like she wanted us around. We were being friendly. And how would you know what she was wearing on certain days? How would you know her schedule? He froze for a moment, just long enough to reveal the truth. But then my father stepped in. Enough! We are trying to help her. Kayla's breathing was growing ragged. Her hands trembled at her sides, and her eyes glossed over with panic. I had seen her handle distressed children with perfect composure, but this was breaking her. Then, as if the situation wasn't nightmarish enough, my mother gestured toward the dining room. Let's all sit down for dessert. Chase and the boys are staying. They're good men, and it's time for Kayla to stop demonizing them. Are you out of your mind? I barked. They stalked her. Stop saying that, my mother snapped. They were just looking out for Logan. Family sticks together. Kayla backed toward the hallway, hand pressed to her chest. Her breaths came in short, painful bursts. I recognized the signs. She was having a panic attack. I tried to reach her, but my mother gripped my arm. No, running away. You're staying until we resolve this. I tore my arm free and rushed to Kayla. She gasped, eyes wide and watery. I can't breathe. I can't. We're leaving, I said firmly. Logan scoffed. Running again, big brother? You were always dramatic. I didn't bother responding. I wrapped an arm around Kayla and guided her out the door, while Chase muttered something crude under his breath. We didn't stop walking until we reached the car. Kayla slid into the passenger seat and curled forward, pulling air into her lungs in thin, desperate shivers. I held her hand, whispering reassurance until her breathing finally steadied. That was the moment everything hardened inside me, the moment the last thread connecting me to my family. That night, Kayla and I contacted our lawyer and initiated the process for restraining orders. But the legal system moved slowly, too slowly. Meanwhile, word spread around St. Helens. Somehow Logan's story, the one where Kayla supposedly led him on and then lied, seeped through the halls. Rumors traveled faster than the truth. Some co-workers took her side. Others whispered things behind her back when they thought she couldn't hear them. One doctor even asked, "Are you sure you misread their intentions? Men can be friendly." She came home crying more nights than not. She stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping well. Every shift felt like an obstacle course of fear and humiliation. When her supervisor called her into the office again, he gently suggested she considered transferring to a different wing or even a different hospital altogether. Kayla didn't say anything at first. She just nodded, eyes tired and defeated. On the drive home, she whispered, "I feel like I'm losing everything." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "Not everything. You still have me, and we'll get through this." We started looking at job openings in other cities. One of her former colleagues had recently moved to a larger medical center in Ridgeview City, about 300 miles away. That colleague said the hospital there needed nurses and could fast-track her application. It felt drastic. It felt unfair. But watching Kayla wilt under the stress, leaving didn't feel like running. It felt like survival. Still, before we got the chance to finalize any plans, an event occurred that would force our decision and make it irreversible. The moment happened at Marissa Tate's wedding, a night that would tear the last scraps of my family apart. That wedding changed everything. Forever.
Marissa Tate had always been one of the few people in my extended family who saw through Logan's polished facade. Even as kids, she was sharp enough to notice when something was off. She was the one who caught him tormenting her childhood cat and tried to warn the family, only to be dismissed and scolded for making up stories. She never forgot how my parents brushed it aside. So when her wedding invitation arrived, Kayla and I hesitated. But Marissa called us personally, her voice steady and sincere. "I know what your brother's been doing," she said. "I've hired security for the reception. If he comes near you or Kayla, they're under strict orders to intervene. I won't let him ruin my day or your safety." Kayla and I exchanged glances. It felt risky, but Marissa had always been trustworthy. So we agreed to go. The ceremony was beautiful. Gentle music, warm lighting, and a peaceful atmosphere Kayla hadn't felt in months. She even laughed a few times, and I held each moment close, savoring the rare sight of her shoulders relaxed. Logan stayed on the opposite side of the room with our parents. He was a groomsman and spent most of the ceremony pretending to be charming, joking with the other men, smiling for pictures. Anyone who didn't know him might have mistaken him for a decent guy. The reception began with dinner, speeches, and dancing. Kayla seemed lighter, almost herself again. Marissa had seated us across the room with her husband Grant's relatives, far from my parents and Logan. For a brief stretch of time, it felt like the chaos of the past months finally loosened its grip. Around 9 p.m., Kayla excused herself to use the restroom. I watched her walk down the hallway, her steps calm and unhurried. 5 minutes passed. 10. A prickling sensation crawled up my spine. I glanced over at the family table. Logan's seat was empty. My pulse spiked. I stood quickly, nodding subtly to Grant and his brother, who had both noticed my sudden tension. They followed my gaze toward the hallway and immediately understood. Without exchanging a single word, the three of us moved. We reached the corner just in time to hear Kayla scream. Grant and his brother sprinted ahead. When I turned the corner behind them, my stomach turned to ice. Logan had Kayla pinned against the wall outside the bathroom. One of his hands was clamped over her mouth, muffling her cries, while the other gripped her upper arm so tightly that her skin had already reddened beneath his fingers. Her dress was torn at the shoulder where he'd yanked her toward him. "Stop resisting," he growled, breath sour from alcohol. "You've been teasing me for months. Don't act innocent." Grant slammed into Logan, tearing him away from Kayla with a forceful shove. His brother grabbed Logan's arms and pinned him behind his back while Logan twisted and shouted obscenities. Kayla stumbled straight into my arms, shaking violently. She looked hollowed out by fear, her breath sharp and desperate. I wrapped her tightly against my chest, shielding her as she sobbed. Logan, meanwhile, thrashed like a wild animal. "She wanted it," he yelled. "She followed me here. Ask anyone. She's obsessed." Grant and his brother held him firmly until local police arrived, summoned by Grant's brother, who had called them before I even reached the hallway. The moment officers entered, Logan shifted strategies. He dropped into fake tears, whimpering about how confused he felt and how Kayla had thrown himself at him. He claimed he was protecting himself. My parents arrived in a frantic flurry. My mother rushed forward, screaming at the officers. "Don't you dare arrest him! He didn't do anything! This girl has been manipulating him for months!" My father stepped between the police and Logan, chest puffed out like he planned to physically block the arrest. "This is a family matter. You don't need to get involved." One of the officers warned him to step aside. When he didn't comply, another officer moved forward, hand on his holster. My parents finally backed off. But not before my mother hurled one last accusation at Kayla. "You led him on. You wanted attention. Don't pretend to be a victim now." Kayla flinched so hard that I felt it through my arms. She buried her face into my shoulder, trembling relentlessly. Logan's meltdown grew worse as the officers cuffed him. "You'll regret this," he screamed at me, spit flying. "You two ruined my life. She's a lying—" He didn't finish. The officers pushed him into the backseat of the patrol car, while he continued kicking at the door. Several wedding guests had recorded the entire scene. Some had even caught the moment Logan followed Kayla down the hallway earlier. Marissa appeared beside me then, eyes wide with anger and heartbreak. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I told everyone he was dangerous. They never listened." Kayla clung to me, shaking so hard that her tears dampened my shirt. That night was the final fracture.
The one no apology, no excuse, no delusion could mend.
The aftermath of Logan's arrest was uglier than anything that came before it. My parents launched an immediate campaign to clear Logan's name. They called relatives, friends, business partners, anyone who would listen. According to them, Kayla had planned the whole thing. She secretly lured Logan down the hallway. She made up the bruises. Grant and his brother supposedly attacked Logan first, and the police overreacted. None of it matched the dozens of videos Marisha collected from guests showing Logan stalking Kayla throughout the reception, then following her out of the ballroom. Our lawyer assured us that with visual evidence, witness accounts, and Kayla's injuries, the case against Logan was strong. Kayla and I didn't wait to see what my family would do next. She accepted the nursing position in Ridgeview City. I arranged a remote work agreement with my company and packed my belongings within the week. The day we left Brookridge, Kayla seemed to breathe freely for the first time in months. We found a quiet apartment in Ridgeview, close to parks and cafes and far from the shadows of my past. Over the next few years, we built a life that felt genuine, warm, steady, and safe. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony, surrounded by people who actually cared for us. Kayla's parents walked her down the aisle. Marissa and Grant attended and toasted to new beginnings. For once, the family gathering didn't feel like a battlefield. We bought a house, we planted a garden, we healed. Kayla flourished at her new hospital, eventually becoming the head pediatric nurse. I was promoted to senior developer, and 3 months ago we welcomed our daughter, Emma, tiny, pink-cheeked, and perfect. Life felt whole. It had been 4 years since we last heard from anyone in my family. Then the call came. I was in a virtual meeting when my phone vibrated with a voicemail from an unknown number. The moment I heard my mother's trembling voice, I froze. She was hysterical, begging, rambling. I called back, more out of shock than concern. She told me Logan had gotten married the previous year to a woman named Elena Harper I hadn't known. They met through a church group. Their families arranged the marriage quickly, eager to see Logan settled. But Logan hadn't changed. He had hidden Elena's injuries for months with help from my father. When Elena missed 3 days of work, a coworker requested a welfare check. Police found her with broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and extensive bruising. She finally broke down and told them everything. She had tried to leave repeatedly. Every time, Logan threatened her, or my father did. My father used his business connections to pressure her family financially. He insisted she was unwell, planting the same seeds of doubt he once used against Kayla. The night she received a promotion that would give her financial independence, Logan snapped. And this time, there was no hiding it. Logan was arrested on multiple domestic violence charges. My father was arrested for witness intimidation and conspiracy. My mother sobbed through the phone, insisting they needed me. She said Elena was lying. She said the family had to unite. She begged me to come home. I told her no. For the first time, she seemed to truly hear the word. I told her she and my father created this. They protected Logan at every turn at the cost of innocent people. I reminded her of Kayla, of the wedding, of the years of denial. She broke down saying we should have stopped him when he was younger. She was right. It was far too late. I blocked her number.
6 months later, Logan accepted a plea deal, 8 years in prison, with parole possible after 5. My father's real estate license was suspended. His business crumbled almost overnight. He now faces additional charges. My mother finally filed for a divorce and began therapy. She sent a long apology letter, 12 pages, but it arrived years too late. Elena now lives with her sister in another state. With Marissa's help, Kayla reached out to offer support. Elena thanked us tearfully, saying, "I wish I had known her story sooner." Several other women from Logan's past came forward, sharing similar experiences of stalking and intimidation. Authorities began investigating these cases too. As for us, Kayla and I focus on raising Emma in a home filled with safety, not fear. Love, not manipulation. Boundaries, not excuses. Sometimes in quiet moments, I think about what might have happened if someone had intervened when Logan was still a boy, if my parents had chosen accountability over denial, if they protected the right child. But those thoughts fade quickly, because the cycle ends here. It ends with me, with Kayla, with Emma, with the family we chose, and the future we're building far from the shadows of Brookridge.